Hello, everyone. It's Jordyn Smith, the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. I have really been inspired to do a video over the function of spirituality pertaining to Neptune and Pisces in the 12th house. Um, this inspiration actually came from my friend Jax, who I was looking at her and one of her friends' charts, and I started talking about this with them, and she was like, "You should do a workshop over this." So I probably will do a workshop over this in the future, but I did want to just do a video for you all for now, going over how Neptune and Pisces and your natal 12th house correspond with the natural ways you can spiritualize. I feel like this is really important, especially the transiting lunar nodes. You know, the North Node is in Pisces and Neptune is conjunct that North Node at 29 degrees Pisces, and we have a lot of Piscean energy. We also are having metonic eclipses this year. We just had the lunar eclipse in Virgo with tons of Pisces dynamics. And so I just felt like I wanted to explain this for those of you who are wanting to understand their own path to spirituality during this time. I feel like it's really necessary and needed for the collective healing that absolutely needs to take place. So, of course, after this video, if you want me to go over this with your chart, you can always book a session. I do have that eclipse special running. You can look at what that entails on my website. But this is, I love doing these videos for you guys. This is my way of putting information out there that is rooted in natural law, and through the language of astrology. I don't want to gatekeep this information. It's why I do this for free. It's why I have this channel, is because these are things that I feel like, with how the world is right now, a lot of us don't understand what is natural spirituality. What does that even look like? So this gets me into, I want to incorporate the transiting lunar nodes in tandem with this talk. We are in this dynamic of experiencing crisis, South Node in Virgo, and the need to make new choices reflected in that North Node of Pisces and the transiting Neptune. And it's dealing with things on a collective unconscious level. The collective unconscious, the ways in which the collective as a whole, the consciousness is conditioned and structured, is referring to the transiting North Node and Pisces and Neptune right now. Of course, Neptune's going to enter into Aries here shortly, and then later this year, it's going to start its retrograde cycle and go back into Pisces. And so this is a very important pivotal time. And what this is really reflecting is, on a collective level, we are seeing massive amounts of crisis, Virgo, stemming from patriarchal distortions of natural laws. Natural, timeless, universal laws is part of the archetype of Pisces and Neptune in the 12th house. And when natural law is distorted, the distortions play out. Natural law is absolutely, and universal timeless law is absolutely rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. And so we can see how the distortion of just that law, that naturally occurring law, is perpetuating an immense amount of trauma and an immense amount of crisis on a collective level. And so I feel like it's important for each of us individually to maybe understand this archetype and how to naturally spiritualize, because it helps our ongoing evolutionary growth, and we're all interconnected. And so hopefully this ripples out and seeds into other people's consciousness on some level. Right now, with the transiting North Node in Pisces, Neptune conjuncted at 29 degrees, there's really this is this pivotal time moment in history where we are wanting to make new choices around dissolving delusional beliefs that are not rooted in actual truth. Actual truth is Pisces, Neptune, and delusions, illusions, fantasy are also Pisces and Neptune. And so we can see that collectively there's this mass undergoing of needing to improve through making new choices that are actually aligned with the actual truth rooted in timeless and universal laws, Pisces, Neptune. So what are the ways in which you can look at this in your chart? What are the ways in which you can naturally spiritualize? This is going to be held within your own natal Neptune, the planetary south node of Neptune, and the planetary north node of Neptune, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But there's a couple of things that I want to lay as a foundation whenever it comes to spiritualizing. Throughout reincarnation, we are evolving on a soul level. And how we evolve is through our pure emotion. Pure emotion is Pisces, Neptune in the 12th house. What does that mean? It means that any type of emotion that is naturally occurring is meant to be felt and experienced in its totality. Total. Neptune, Pisces, 12th house. And that is because our consciousness is pure emotion. Source is pure emotion. Consciousness is genderless. Source is genderless because it is just pure emotion. That is what consciousness is. And it's creative intelligence through pure emotion. So this is why we experience different dynamics rooted in pure emotion and the psychological effects of our emotional dynamics, that when we act on a desire and we make a choice, that how we learn is through the emotional experience of that. And how we evolve through the emotional experience of that is through integrating the lessons of that experience. And when we integrate those lessons, we can evolve through culminating desires and also through culminating psychological patterns linked to our emotional dynamics on a soul level. It's through that action we receive feedback, and through that feedback, we understand ourselves on an emotional level. And whenever we are not heeding the lesson or the lesson hasn't been integrated, that's why we experience things over and over again until we gain the emotional knowledge around that action and the consequences within that. And consequences can be negative or positive. Okay. So when we are looking at this dynamic and we're looking at the overall collective unconscious and how it has been structured, which, by the way, the ways in which our consciousness, Pisces, Neptune, 12th house, has been structured is seen through Saturn, Capricorn in the 10th house. It's through the conditioning. Over many, many lifetimes, we learn different dynamics, and it conditions our consciousness, which formulates or forms the structure. Another way of looking at this is we are consciousness, a soul that has consciousness, and we are inhabiting a physical structure of a body as well. Whenever this body ceases to exist and it dies, our consciousness is still there, and eventually we get reincarnated into a new form. Okay? Pisces Neptune is also source, or what we would call God. And when we are looking at the collective and how the collective unconscious has been structured for thousands of years, it is rooted in man-made patriarchal belief systems. Beliefs correspond to Pisces, but actual truth also corresponds to Pisces. It's two sides of the coin. A belief is just that. It is, I'm believing in something, but yet I'm not actually having the direct experience with that thing, right? And so direct experience or direct inner perception is Neptune Pisces because it's rooted in the actual truth. And that's why there's so many trials and tribulations whenever it comes to Neptune Pisces in your own natal 12th house. It can speak to the ways in which you could experience the emotion of disillusionment. This isn't what I thought it was. This isn't what I believed it was. And that's because it's wanting us to dissolve that belief that is actually a distortion of natural law. That's why Pisces Neptune in your own 12th house can speak to where you would give ultimate meaning to something. And there, throughout our evolutionary journey, we learn the lesson that the only place to give ultimate meaning is within ourselves and our connection to Source and God. That takes a lot of lifetimes. It's great to have an intellectual reverence for that, but it's different whenever you actually have the direct experience with it and come to know it and not just intellectualize it. All right. So when we're looking at the natural ways to spiritualize in your own natal chart, you're going to be looking at your natal Neptune by sign and by house and the aspects it's making, whatever's on your 12th house cusp and its ruler and the aspects it's making, and wherever Neptune is in your chart by house. And if there's planets in there and the aspects that all of this is making, this is going to speak to the natural ways in which you can spiritualize, and it's also going to speak to the distortions that have played out, the illusions, the delusions, the beliefs, the fantasies, the ideals that have been conditioned within our consciousness. Meaning, think about it this way. We are so often conditioned to give ultimate meaning to a relationship, to someone outside of ourselves. If I have a relationship with a partner and it checks these boxes, I'm supposed to be happy, I'm going to understand. And we put a lot of power and a lot of belief into that. And then eventually that delusion gets popped through the experience of disillusionment. This is not what I thought it was. This is not what I believed it to be. And what that does is it gets us back on track to understand the ultimate truth, the actual truth, right? That how we experience the divinity comes from within, and that direct perception and connection, not the belief. All right. So when we're looking at this phenomenon and we're looking at man-made ways or patriarchal ways to spiritualize, it's always going to hold a root in suppression, suppression of something that is naturally occurring. That is why, if we think about it, we're supposed to connect with our pure emotion in order to evolve our consciousness. The conditioning on a collective level through man-made patriarchal laws is that there are certain emotions that are good and certain emotions that are bad. And that is why we have a lot of people who are afraid to feel or experience the pure emotion, like anger. It is naturally occurring. It is a natural emotion. If there's an injustice that happens to you, to me, to someone, anger would be a natural occurring emotion that would come up revolving around that. It's what you do constructively with that anger that is paramount, correct? And the choices that you make through that. And that would be how you evolve. So the other dynamic is the suppression of one's sexuality. Sexuality is a timeless universal law. There are natural ways to spiritualize through sexuality, actually. If we are thinking about the collective right now, there's a lot of people who are being shamed, judged, and made to feel guilt over something that's naturally occurring within them around their sexuality. It's naturally occurring. Whenever we are judging or shaming someone around that, we are trying to say to them subliminally, you need to suppress that dynamic about yourself because it's wrong or it's bad. And really, it's natural. We all, at some point, experience the array of sexuality in order to evolve. So anything that is a suppression of your pure emotion, your emotions, or of any of the senses is a distortion of natural spirituality. That's why we see forms of meditation that say that you have to hold your breath. That is suppression of breath. That is not a natural form of spiritualizing. So it's important for us to keep that in mind, just that simple principle of if it's naturally occurring and we're being taught or someone's, conditioning us to suppress that, we know right then and there that it is a distortion of these universal timeless truths. And it's going to impede upon us having that direct experience, direct knowing of what God is, what source is, and how that is actually something within ourselves. This is interesting to think about too, because how we have had our consciousness conditioned for thousands of years through reincarnation and different experiences is, is really speaking to when you look at your own Neptune in your chart, where Pisces is, what's on your 12th house cusp, it can speak to how you've conceptualized God. And how we conceptualize God over time evolves. But if we believe that God is a more patriarchal God, that is how we're going to experience God. All right. So however you're conceptualizing source or God is how you're going to experience source or God. And again, that evolves over time, and it's important for me to say this. So we need to think about this. Another patriarchal man-made belief around God is that God is perfect. And that is actually an illusion. Nothing perfect is going to create imperfect beings, imperfect souls, because the fact of the matter is that we are actually helping source to evolve as well. Through sexuality, through emotions, through our choice making, through our creativity, all of that. We are helping to evolve, and it helps to evolve the collective as well. So when we think about the notion that God is perfect, which is what is taught in most religions, this is the basis of where judgment, shame, and guilt comes from, because we're trying to live up to these standards that are suppressive of what's actually naturally occurring. And who can ever live up to perfection? No one. And so it induces an immense amount of shame and guilt that's learned, that is actually needing to be liberated from, because it's creating a distortion within one's own consciousness. Again, it goes back to how, women are taught that they are too emotional. That's conditioning. That goes back to this principle. It's a belief. Men are taught that they shouldn't be emotional. So both suppressing for different thought from different types of teaching around this. Sexuality. You can't have attractions to this person or this kind of a person or this, that, or the other. And so it induces guilt and shame for a lot of people. This all comes back to this notion that God is perfect, and God is not perfect. And we are not supposed to be suppressing these dynamics. Um, we're feeling shame or guilt or judging ourselves for experiencing things that are naturally occurring within us on a soul conscious level. I can't make myself any more clear. And now you understand what's going on in the world a little bit more, and you also understand these transiting lunar nodes. So it's getting us in touch with beliefs versus actual truths, or experiencing the actual truth. And some of the natural expressions of Neptune and Pisces are love, like unconditional love, compassion, empathy, hope, faith. Um, all of this. On the flip side, it can be disillusionment, a loss of faith, a loss of hope, judgment, shame, fear around experiencing the divinity, because we're taught that God is, fire, hell, and brimstone, this, that, or the other. And so it's wanting us to challenge these dynamics, and it's wanting us to transcend the conditioning that is suppressive in nature in order to experience the ultimate, the beloved, the supreme joy that comes from understanding that. And this is why I'm also going to say Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. Venus is dealing with how we relate to others and our relationship to self. And when we're tapping into the higher octave of Venus through Neptune, we're not looking for the ultimate outside. We're going to go within the Taurus side of Venus to connect to source. It's going to help us to have self-reliance, feel healthy self-esteem, and compassion and love and empathy for oneself. Whenever we're looking for it outside, a lot of distortions can come into play. Crisis can happen in our relationships in order to get us back on track to become more self-sufficient and self-reliant. Neptune being the higher octave of Venus is also speaking to Venus through Taurus is about your own inner resources. Connected to Neptune, it's teaching us that we have everything inside of ourselves, the ability to experience God within ourselves through the direct perception. And this is also where, when we have hope and faith, and when we have a connection to source, that we become self-reliant, because we know that no matter what, when there is a sincere intention behind what we're doing, everything is going to be taken care of. It might not be what we expect, Libra side of Venus, but it's going to be exactly what we need in order to take care of ourselves And so it's teaching us about hope and faith and trust in Source and cultivating a deep inner relationship with Source. And then that ripples out into our other relationships where we can then have relationships where people are self-reliant, because we're self-reliant. And so the dynamic of I need you ceases to exist. It's more of I'm here because I want to, not because I need you. And that mitigates the dynamic of love with strings attached. I'll do this if you do this, right? And I'm not talking about boundaries here. I'm talking about emotional needs that we're not meeting for ourselves, physical needs that we're not meeting for ourselves, all of that. That eventually, through our own evolutionary journey, does not occur anymore because we found it within through our direct connection with Source. So I wanted to say all of these things, keeping in mind how you conceptualize Source is how you're going to experience Source. It's either going to be rooted naturally or it's going to be rooted in patriarchal man-made stuff, and that can be really hard. I've experienced both, and I'm going to say naturally spiritualizing and connecting with natural timeless truths is a lot happier and a lot joyous than anything that is suppressive of that natural function within. So in your natal chart, your Neptune is going to speak to a natural way that you can spiritualize. If you have Neptune, let's say in the 8th house, this can be through forms of sexuality, right? Put that Neptune in the 8th house, and in Capricorn, that can also be through your karmic obligations with family members of being the householder. You could spiritualize naturally through being a natural role model and showing what a non-repressed spiritual person looks like, right? By showing compassion and acceptance and love in that way. Neptune by house and sign is going to speak to the natural ways and then also where distortions have played out. You put Neptune in that 8th house again, and distortions that have played out could be where one was giving ultimate meaning to their sexual relationships with others and finding power in that instead of finding power within the direct connection with Source. That can also be Neptune and Capricorn in the 8th house, where one has experienced a lot of loss, abandonment, betrayal whenever it came to patriarchal false prophets or spiritual leaders, or just authority figures, giving ultimate meaning to authority figures in their life instead of experiencing the ultimate beloved from within and that direct connection. So it can play out a multitude of ways. There's always the two sides of the coin, the natural expression and the distorted expression. The other dynamic that I want to say is that we're all called to be of service in some type of way. We all have a Virgo, a Mercury, a 6th house in our chart that speaks to a way to be of service, a way to self-improve. Right now, the South Node is in Virgo, transiting somewhere in your chart, speaking to your own natal Mercury. And it's speaking to what needs to be purged, what needs to be improved, what needs to be self-adjusted, and where you could actually play a role of service to others. Okay, so that's important for me to mention because the planetary South Node of Neptune for everyone is between the 9 degrees to 14 degrees of Aquarius. And what this is speaking to is, even in transit right now, it's still there. What this is speaking to is the collective unconscious and the prior lifetimes of when we were living in the first Aquarian age. What does that mean? The first Aquarian age means that where everything was rooted in the natural laws of giving, sharing, and inclusion. All right. It also speaks to the trauma, Aquarius, of whenever 25,000 years ago, a shift started into the Pisces and Virgo ages and sub-ages that we're experiencing now, of man-made spirituality and religious belief systems that induced trauma because it was suppressive. This is where, you can see your own natal Uranus is the ruler of your south node of Neptune. That south node is going to fall in your chart in a house, and it's going to aspect things, and it's going to be ruled by your Uranus. It's going to speak to the traumatizing experiences that you've had dealing with this dynamic. It's also going to speak to there are some people who had direct lifetimes during the first Aquarian age where everything was rooted in natural law. And then other people might not have had those direct lifetimes, but yet there is a collective unconscious Neptune Pisces imprinting Aquarius of those memories. And for each one of us, we have subconscious memories, Aquarius, Uranus, either from those lifetimes or through the collective unconscious of what that was like. And so it can help us to understand the ways in which to liberate from conditioning, Aquarius and your own natal Uranus, that south node in Aquarius of Neptune south node, and where we could be tapping into the higher intelligence of source to recall this, or to lean into these more natural ways. So going back to someone who has Neptune in the 8th house in Capricorn, and what I told you could be both sides of natural spiritualizing, well, you could see where those distortions played out. Let's say if they have a south node in Aquarius in the 10th house, and it's ruled by Uranus also in the 8th house in Capricorn. That can be someone who recalls prior lifetimes, or at the very least has a big imprint on having lifetimes where they were rooted in these natural laws, where society, 10th house Capricorn, was structured in this way, and then where they experienced massive amounts of trauma on a soul level, Uranus in the 8th house, stemming from man-made laws, Capricorn and Uranus, and how that person could have experienced scapegoating or persecution, judgments, and a lot of distortions around learned guilt that have created an immense amount of disillusionment on a soul level, and how they are needing to liberate from those dynamics through confronting them, 8th house, and through restructuring their life, Capricorn, in a natural and timeless way. All right. And then you can see the ongoing evolution of a way that someone could naturally spiritualize through the North Node of Neptune, which for everyone is in Leo. And that's going to fall somewhere in your own natal chart. And it's also going to be ruled by your sun. It's going to fall in by house and by sign in your own natal chart, an aspect of other things. This is going to speak to another ongoing evolutionary way of naturally spiritualizing. North Node in Leo, Neptune's North Node in Leo, is speaking to understanding one's own unique way in which they've been created by source. It's also going to speak to spirituality is always going to come through the form of love, Leo, joy, and self-creative actualization. It's going to come through a creative impulse. All right. And then how is that done? Through your sun. So let's use the chart that I was using as an example. Well, the sun The south node of the north node of Neptune is in Leo in the fourth house. This would be someone who's needing to self-actualize through experiencing self-love and self-dignity, Leo, as a way to nurture and validate themselves from within on an emotional level, to experience the divinity within, to experience source. North Node in Leo in the fourth house. Well, it's ruled by a sun in the ninth house in Capricorn, and that's conjunct Neptune in the eighth house in Capricorn. What would that mean? Well, this person is wanting to culminate long-standing dynamics of where they started to suppress who they were, Capricorn, because of the judgment, the fear, and the trauma that happened in prior lifetimes by being a natural soul, sun in the ninth house, and how they are needing to then creatively self-actualize through becoming their own soul authority, Capricorn, through understanding and reconnecting to their actual nature and their personal truth, the sun in the ninth house. Then you've got to understand that we're all here to be of service on some level. And that axis of South Node, North Node of Neptune, Leo, Aquarius, is that we are co-creating with Source in order to not only evolve ourselves, but to help Source evolve. And so whenever we are creatively actualizing North Node in Leo, Neptune's North Node in Leo, ruled by your sun, there is some type of way in which you are meant to give purpose, creative purpose to your life's meaning. That is actually a form of co-creation with Source. And it could also be a form of service to others in order to benefit everyone that is rooted in natural timeless laws. So the person with the sun, Capricorn in the ninth house, conjunct Neptune in the eighth house, could be through them learning how to love themselves and reconnect with their own personal truths and dissolving the past and really moving into deeper forms of natural spirituality through confronting where they bought into delusions and beliefs and ultimate meaning. They could then be a teacher, sun in the ninth house, in order to be a natural role model of goddess, of source, reflecting that, right? And helping other people recover their own soul authority through their truths. That can also be someone who is helping other people through creatively actualizing by understanding the difference between making a correct judgment and then actually being judgmental. There's so many ways that that could, be looked at. And so it's important for us to remember that during this time period, where these nodes that are transiting in Virgo and Pisces is going to bring up South Node in Virgo, issues of the past, prior issues, whether this lifetime or prior lifetimes. And it's going to really be revealed by your own natal Mercury. And as a bottom line, it's going to deal with your conditioning and what's been learned, Mercury, and how that perpetuates emotional habituations, and the need to purge those. And then the North Node in Pisces that's transiting and your natal Neptune is going to speak to how you tap into that higher octave of Venus and you make new choices in order to feel more secure within yourself, in order to heal Pisces, Neptune. So you can see that there's a lot underway with these dynamics right now. And everyone at any stage of evolution is going to spiritualize some way, somehow. And I want to make it really clear that there are some people who are going to naturally spiritualize through being atheist. That, how most people are taught, is wrong. At some point in our evolutionary journey, We are absolutely wanting to think for ourselves and throw off so much from the past. And that can be where we don't believe in God. Maybe we're more science-based. It's our own form of individuation, and it is actually a natural process, and that can be a natural role of spiritualizing. It evolves over time. And so this is a time period to even look at your own thinking, learning, and conditioning around how you've conceptualized or believed what God is. And this can be a time where you can dissolve some of that if you're understanding that some of that could be a distortion. That is going to naturally help you evolve and to heal and to culminate long-standing dynamics, which are seen with this transiting North Node in Pisces. So I hope that this video has been of help for you in understanding this. Neptune, Pisces in the 12th house is the culmination of all of the archetypes. It's one of the hardest ones to grasp. This is just like a tip of the iceberg, not even the tip of the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg, because this is an archetype of the totality of everything. But I'm hoping that this helps you understand something about yourself or what is wanting to be healed within you, the difference between guilt, shame, judgment. There are natural guilt. That is one thing that I didn't touch on. A natural guilt is never going to leave you because it's where you were doing something that was a distortion of natural law. And the natural guilt will never leave because it's earned. It's teaching you to never do it again. That's why you won't do it again. Learned guilt, that's conditioned guilt, whenever it is understood that it is not supposed to be there and it's impeding upon one from naturally spiritualizing, when someone has the awareness around that and it is left from the consciousness, it's not going to come back. It's going to be healed. It's as simple as that. So I hope that, like I said, that this is something that helps you, because we're all on a spiritual journey, no matter what stage we're at in our own evolution. And at the very least, culmination and healing certain dynamics and making new choices around them when we're empowered with understanding the truth, um, is only going to propel us forward into our evolutionary growth. So if you have questions, you want to make a comment about this, please do so in, the comments section. I love interacting with you guys. I will answer something. If I don't know the answer to it, I'll tell you I don't know the answer to it. Like I said, this is one of those archetypes that's so vast and it can be so hard to grasp or understand. I am always learning and understanding this more and more. But please do ask a question. Tell me your experience if something like this is resonating, If you're wanting to understand this in your own natal chart, reach out, book a session. I don't mind. I'd love to talk to you about it if it's something that's on your mind, you feel drawn to. And then also, I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. I really feel that I'm going to put a workshop together over this at some point in time and be on the lookout for that. I want to get some more direction around how to do this. And that means that I'm going to have to cultivate maybe some patience. I don't know if it's going to come to me like that. And I don't know when I'm supposed to do it. And so I want to wait until that comes to me around how to do this and when to do it. But I will say I have a feeling that this is a workshop that will come up, in the future to help us out with this. It's been a really pivotal teaching and understanding for my own evolutionary growth. I have I have the North Node in Pisces in my 10th house, and I have, Mars in my 12th, and a lot of my own evolutionary growth has been around changing the ways in which I conceptualize God and not suppressing myself, because a lot of that has been around fear of aligning my will with God's. And it's something that I feel really passionate about, to do that in a way that is loving and can help other people, um, and isn't suppressive dogma, right? So yeah, questions, let me know. Not pertaining to your actual chart, I can't do that on my YouTube, but if it is pertaining to this archetype or what I'm talking about, definitely ask about it. And then if you want to know where your planetary nodes are, that is on truenode.com, and I will post a link for it in the description as well. Again, if you want me to go over this with you, um, you know, come see me. I would love to. And of course, you've always got to relate this to the bottom line evolutionary dynamic in someone's natal chart. So it's the totality of the chart. I want to make that really clear. You can't just pick this out and be like, this is this. You've got to understand why, the bottom line and what someone is trying to actualize in an evolutionary sense in this lifetime. And then you can filter in the Neptune triad, in tandem with that. So I love you all. I hope that this helped, and I will see you all soon.